Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes. Today we're diving deep into Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog, 21 great ways to stop procrastinating and get more done in less time. Now this book, it's more than just time management tips, wouldn't you say? It feels like a whole philosophy.
Oh, absolutely. It's really about taking control, getting a grip on your productivity.
And our goal today is basically to pull out the core stuff, the most practical ideas from Tracy to help you, our listener, feel, well, more effective and maybe a bit less swamped.
Yeah, cut through that overwhelm.
We'll definitely unpack that main idea, the eating the frog bit, tackling the big ugly task first, and look at some of the key ways he suggests doing that.
And that central metaphor, it's so powerful, isn't it? It comes from Mark Twain, apparently. Tackle the worst thing first, and the rest of the day just feels easier. Psychologically, it's brilliant.
Right. So the frog is what? Your biggest, most important task. The one you're probably dreading.
Exactly that. The one with the biggest impact, but often the one you least want to face. And the core advice is just so simple, but effective. Figure out your frog each day and, eat it first thing.
Let's dig into the why behind procrastination, though.
Yeah.
Tracy doesn't just say stop it. He looks at the roots, right?
He does. He talks about psychological barriers, things like fear of failure or being a perfectionist or just feeling totally buried under everything.
Which is where the 21 methods come in, I guess. It's like a toolkit.
Precisely. It's not just one magic bullet. It's a whole system, a set of tools you can use to break down those barriers. And underneath it all, there's this philosophy of living deliberately. Consciously choosing where to put your time and energy, focusing on what actually matters.
And Tracy's background, being in sales, an entrepreneur, that adds some real-world weight, doesn't it? This isn't just theory.
Definitely. You feel that practicality coming through. This stuff has been tested in the trenches, so to speak.
Okay, so if someone wants to start applying this, where does Tracy say to begin? What's step one?
Step one, he calls it set the table, which is really just a great metaphor for getting crystal clear on your goals.
Yeah.
He basically argues that a huge reason we procrastinate is just fuzziness, lack of clarity.
Makes sense. If you don't know the target, how can you aim?
Exactly. So setting the table means knowing exactly what you want to achieve. Clear goals are the foundation. He pushes for a really systematic way to do this, like actually writing down your major goals. And interestingly, writing them in the present tense.
As if they're already done. Why is that?
Well, it kind of tricks your brain, makes them feel more real, more achievable. It shifts your mindset. He has this great quote, something like, "The ability to set goals and make plans for their accomplishment is the master skill of success. Writing them down is key to that."
And he suggests breaking them down too, right? Like career goals, financial, health, getting specific.
Yep, categorizing helps you see the whole picture. Then the crucial part is breaking those big goals down into actual specific tasks you can do. That's how you connect the big vision to what you do day to day.
So clarity is job one. Write it down, make it specific.
And review them regularly. Goals aren't static. Long-term, monthly, weekly check-ins. He also stresses focusing on the single most important goal at any given time so you don't spread yourself too thin. It's about avoiding that trap. Michelangelo apparently warned about aiming too low and hitting it rather than aiming high. Set ambitious but clear targets.
Okay, clear goal set. What's the next move to keep things rolling?
Method 2. Plan every day in advance. This one's huge. Tracy has this rule of thumb. Every minute you spend planning saves 10 minutes in execution. Think about that return.
Wow, 10 times. That's significant.
It really is. Planning, he says, brings the future into the present so you can do something about it now.
Instead of just reacting when the day hits you.
Exactly. He even suggests planning the next day at the end of your current workday.
Why then?
You give your subconscious time to chew on it overnight. You wake up and your brain's already kind of primed and ready to go. You hit the ground running.
Interesting psychological edge there.
Definitely. So the process involves listing everything you need to do, and then crucially applying that 80-20 rule we need to talk more about to figure out the high-value stuff. He actually lays out a 6-step planning process. It covers writing goals down daily, thinking about consequences, prioritizing, delegating, the whole 9 yards.
So it's a structured way to think through the day ahead.
Right, and it reduces that anxiety, that feeling of where do I even start?
But these plans aren't rigid, are they? Life happens.
Oh, absolutely not. Flexibility is built in. You review and revise. He even talks about creative procrastination.
Creative procrastination. Sounds like an excuse.
Well, it's about deliberately putting off the low-value tasks. making a conscious choice to not do the unimportant stuff so you can do the important stuff.
Okay, that makes more sense. Prioritizing what you ignore.
Precisely. But the key takeaway is that planning, while vital for reducing anxiety and giving control, has to lead to action. It helps you identify the frog, but you still have to, eat it.
Right. Okay, you mentioned the 80-20 rule a couple of times. Let's tackle that one. Method 3.
Yep, method 3. Apply the 80-20 rule to everything. The Pareto principle. The core idea is simple but profound. Roughly 20% of your activities will produce about 80% of your results.
So find that 20% and double down on it.
That's the essence of it. Focus your energy on that critical few, that 20% that really moves the needle. Those are often your frogs. And the other 80%, the stuff that only gives you 20% of the value, those are the things you look at to minimize, delegate, or just stop doing altogether.
So you constantly have to ask yourself,
is this task in my top 20% or my bottom 80%? That question becomes your filter.
it's a lens for figuring out which tasks are the actual frogs.
Exactly. High impact, contribute to long-term goals, use your best skills. Often difficult, yes, but that's where the value is. Tracy warns against majoring in minors, getting busy with easy, low-value stuff just to feel like you're doing something.
Busy work, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. So discriminating between high-value and low-value uses of your time is just critical. He even suggests an exercise. List your tasks, rate their value 1-10. Get honest.
It forces that strategic thinking about where your effort actually counts.
It does, and it's an ongoing thing. What's in your 20% might change, so you have to keep applying the rule.
Thinking about impact naturally leads to thinking about the future, right? What are the downstream effects?
Perfectly sets up method 4. Consider the consequences. Tracy actually says consequences might be the most important word in time management. Think long-term.
So less focus on immediate ease or difficulty, more on where this task leads.
Precisely. He argues that successful people have this long-time perspective. They're always thinking about how today's actions play out down the road. The key question becomes, what are the potential consequences of doing this task or not doing it?
That adds a layer of seriousness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes it harder to just blow things off.
It really does. It forces you to evaluate the true importance. He talks about tasks with high value and positive long-term consequences. Those are your biggest frogs. He believes a lot of procrastination happens simply because we don't fully think through those long-term effects. We choose short-term comfort over long-term gain.
Delaying gratification. Classic challenge.
Yep. And cultivating that habit of thinking long-term in everything you do is vital, according to Tracy. Success often involves that short-term sacrifice for a bigger future payoff.
Okay, so we've got goals, planning, the 80-20 rule, consequences. How did we tie this together in a daily system?
That brings us neatly to method 5. Practice the ABCDE method continually. This is super practical. The idea is simple. Invest a little thought up front in prioritizing your list so you naturally focus on the important stuff first.
ABCDE. How does that work? Letters for tasks.
Yeah, you go through your task list and assign a letter. A, tasks. These are your absolute must-dos. Serious consequences if they don't get done. These are your true frogs. If you have more than one, you rank them. A1, A2, A3. B, tasks. These are things you should do. Mild consequences if you don't. But the rule is, never do a B task if you have an A task left undone. C, tasks. Nice to do, but no real consequences either way. Lunch with a colleague, maybe. Don't do these during your peak energy time. D, tasks. Delegate. Anything someone else can do, give it to them. Frees you up for your A tasks. E, tasks. Eliminate stuff you shouldn't be doing at all. It adds no value. Just cut it.
Wow, that's really clear-cut. It forces you to be honest about what really matters.
Totally. It makes the value judgment explicit. Tracy says the big difference between high and low performers is often what they procrastinate on. High performers put off the CDE tasks. Low performers put off the A tasks.
So apply this every day to your list.
Every single day. Be ruthless about identifying those A1 tasks. That feeling of overwhelm often comes from drowning in B's and C's, not from having too many critical A's.
This seems like it would cut down stress significantly.
It does, because it gives you clarity and control. You know what your top priority is.
Okay, that leads nicely into thinking about what those A tasks actually are in our jobs.
Right, which is method 6. Focus on key result areas, or KRAs. KRAs are basically the main outcomes you're responsible for delivering in your role, the things you absolutely have to do well to succeed.
So the core functions of your job.
Pretty much. And excelling in your KRAs is fundamental to tackling your important frogs, because your frogs usually live within your KRAs. Tracy brings in the theory of constraints here, saying your weakest KRA often holds back your overall performance, like the weakest link in a chain.
So find your weakest area and focus there.
Well, first, identify them all. Most jobs have maybe 5 to 7 KRAs. Ask yourself, what results am I paid for? What gets measured? What could get me fired if I mess it up?
Be brutally honest.
Yes. Then rate yourself, maybe 1 to 10, in each KRA. Anything below a 7, Tracy says, is likely a constraint, a bottleneck, and tasks aimed at improving that weak KRA. Those automatically become A priorities. Those are frogs you need to eat.
So improving a weakness becomes a high-leverage activity.
Exactly. And this applies outside work too. Health KRAs, relationship KRAs, etc. We often procrastinate on improving our weak spots, but fixing them gives a huge boost to confidence and overall effectiveness.
It makes sense. Facing the weakness head-on.
And building on that need for focus, method 7 is obey the law of forced efficiency. The core quote here is, there is never enough time to do everything, but there is always enough time to do the most important things.
The classic, I don't have enough time excuse crusher.
Precisely. It acknowledges the reality of limited time, but forces you to prioritize within it. Pressure makes you choose what gets done. Think about deadlines, they force efficiency, right? You suddenly find the time.
Yeah, amazing how productive you can be the hour before a deadline.
Exactly. Tracy says high performers don't wait for external deadlines. They create their own sense of urgency. He suggests things like setting tight, self-imposed deadlines, working as if you only have 1 day left for a project, just cultivating a bias for action.
So using time pressure as a tool, not an enemy.
Right. It helps counteract Parkinson's law, work expanding to fill the time available. It keeps you focused on actual output, not just being busy. Regularly ask, what's the most valuable use of my time right now?
That's a powerful question to keep asking. Okay, these are great for during the work, but what about just getting started on those big, ugly frogs?
Good point. That's where method 8 comes in. Prepare thoroughly before you begin. Tracy argues that a major reason we put off big tasks is simply that we haven't prepared properly, we don't have what we need, or the first step isn't clear.
So preparation reduces the friction to starting.
Exactly. Both practical friction, like not having the right file, and psychological friction, like feeling daunted. He has this 6P formula.
Yeah.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. Catchy. What does that look like in practice?
It means setting up your workspace, gathering all the info, materials, tools you'll need before you sit down to do the task, making sure your tech is ready, having everything within reach so you don't need to get up, even just outlining or mind mapping the task on paper first.
Setting the stage for focused work.
Right, especially for complex tasks. Breaking it down during prep makes it feel manageable. You can even use that Swiss cheese idea here. Poke a few small holes in the task during prep to get it started.
But beware of endless preparation, right?
Absolutely. Preparation is crucial, but it can also become a form of procrastination itself if you never actually start the doing. You need to know when to transition.
And sometimes we hesitate because we feel we don't know how to do the task well.
Which leads directly to method 9, do your homework, continuous learning. If you lack skill or knowledge in an area related to your frog, you're naturally going to avoid it. Improving your skills makes the task less daunting, maybe even enjoyable.
Confidence comes from competence. Tracy calls it the momentum principle of success. Once you get good at something and start seeing results, it's easier to keep going. So homework here means deliberate learning in your field. Reading, courses, podcasts like this one, seminars, studying successful people, whatever it takes to get better at your key tasks.
Investing in your skills makes eating frogs easier.
Much easier. And he notes that finishing any task releases endorphins, creates a positive feedback loop. So, learning confidence, action results, motivation, more learning, it's a virtuous cycle. Especially vital today with things changing so fast.
That's a really positive loop to get into.
Definitely. And Tracy includes other related ideas too, like method 10, leveraging your special talents, focusing on what you're naturally good at and enjoy because you're less likely to procrastinate there.
And delegate the stuff that's not your strength.
Right. And method 11, identifying your key constraints, finding the main bottleneck holding you back, often internal, like a skill gap or a belief, and making that the frog you focus on removing.
Finding the biggest obstacle.
Yep. And then there's method 12, take it one oil barrel at a time. Such a great visual.
Huge, overwhelming projects.
Exactly. Like crossing a desert. You don't focus on the whole desert, just the next barrel. Break massive tasks down into tiny, manageable steps. The salami slice or Swiss cheese methods again. Just focus on the very next action.
Builds momentum and reduces that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Totally. And then, of course, he circles back powerfully with Method 17. Do the most difficult task first, which is the core eat that frog idea. He re-emphasizes why it's so crucial, the psychological win you get.
Start the day with a victory.
Precisely. Even if you're not a morning person, he argues your willpower is generally strongest earlier. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. Making this a habit, he says, can be life-changing.
And finally, he talks about finishing, right?
Yes. Method 21. Practice task completion. Finish what you start. Avoid multitasking siren call. Seeing things through to completion gives that endorphin rush, builds momentum, and reduces the mental clutter and stress of unfinished business. Discipline in finishing is key.
So, wow. As you can see, Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog is just packed with actionable stuff for beating procrastination and really taking charge of your productivity. That core idea, identify the big important task, your frog, and do it first combined with goal setting, planning, prioritizing, using things like 80-20 and ABCDE, thinking long term. It's a really powerful system.
It really is. And remembering to break down those huge tasks, create urgency, prepare properly, and just keep learning. It all fits together.
Absolutely. So to really dive into all 21 of these great ways to stop procrastinating, we definitely recommend you grab a copy of Eat That Frog. You can find a link in the description.
It's well worth the read.
And of course, be sure to subscribe to Books and Bytes for more deep dives into insightful books like this one. Thanks for handing in.